Hello, everybody. It's me, Booga. Sorry for all the cancellations. The lateness on this video was not planned. Um, because I've been getting sick like every 5 seconds. I'm getting terrible sleep. It's bad. I'm sorry. But now we're back, and this should be out tomorrow on April 3rd. If it's not, shoot me. The last video I was gonna make was gonna be on something I don't really care about, but a lot of people do. I'm not gonna say what it is. I'll probably make a video on it one day later on, but not today. So today, what we're gonna be talking about is the war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine. Because recently, I've been seeing a bit about it more. First, I'm gonna get this out there. I am at least a little bit Ukrainian, to my knowledge. And that could be 5%, that could be 10%. I really don't know, to be honest with you. But I'm not Russian. But we're gonna get into that. So I'm gonna explain the war, in a way too. This is for beginners. I can explain it in two ways. Russia has two main goals. One is political, the other is religious. So to get into the political one, Russia used to own Ukraine for a very, very, very long time. We have to go back thousands, not even thousand, like 1,000 years basically, to the Kievan Rus. Now, the Kievan Rus was basically Russia and Ukraine kind of in one country, but not really. I mean, it's culturally similar, but not really. So Kievan Rus is like kind of Ukraine. The capital's in Ukraine. Most of it's similar to Ukraine, but it's not really modern Ukraine the way we think it. Now, the Mongols come in, they take over, and they destroy the Kievan Rus. And then these Vikings come in, they settle around Novgorod and that kind of area. In the north, around St. Petersburg is today, kind of. Fast forward again, this guy named Ivan, he reunites Russia, kicks out the Mongols, and now he's supreme leader of all of Russia. And over the centuries and years and however long, right, eventually Russia ends up getting really big. It stretches from all the way to Siberia to Poland even. But one thing is that it's consistent is part of this giant Russian empire has always held a part of Ukraine. It has held the northern part, it held the south, it grabbed onto Crimea. But all you gotta know is Ukraine was a part of Russia for a long time. Fast forward to World War I, that happens. Russia fights Germany, loses, goes into civil war. Ukraine kind of is independent for a little bit, but not really. Then the land of modern Ukraine is split mostly between Poland and Soviet Russia, because the Soviets won in the Russian Civil War, and now Russia controls most of Ukraine at this point. Now that Ukraine is kind of under the boot of Russia, they do a lot of bad things, even worse than they did before. Originally, they had, kind of bullied them, forced their culture on them, forced them to be more Russian, the language, culture, whatever, right? But now they were kind of, again, doing a lot worse now, especially with the Holodomor, where basically Stalin just ordered everyone to, all the soldiers to come, steal Ukrainian bread, and force them to starve, basically. And some 7 million, maybe 12 million people died in it. A lot of people died. And it's not really talked about much, but it's a huge deal and kind of soured Ukrainian relations to the Russians. Because a lot of people died, really. But after that, Russia goes into World War II, comes out the strong Russian Empire that we know in the Cold War, where it's Soviet Russia against the evil capitalist West and whatever not. Until 1991, Russia collapsed and kind of lost all of Ukraine. Like, all the land that you would consider Ukraine is gone. Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Donbass, all those regions that had a lot of Russians in them that they had kind of forced in from areas that were nominally Kazakh or Ukrainian or whatever, became more Russian, and those areas had Russians in them. Now, in 2000, when Vladimir Putin became president, he and a lot of other Russians saw the diaspora in Ukraine as an oppression. They needed to unite with their people. They wanted to be one, because there was such a big diaspora, and they felt that they would be squashed out. And again, not to say that that didn't ever happen. Again, it's its own thing. But then there was a bunch of riots in Ukraine over a pro-Russian president in 2014. I learned the name of this recently. It was called the Euromaidan. But effectively, the Ukrainians were not happy with the pro-Russian government because they were going to take loans from Russia, which they did not support. They overthrew the government and established a pro-Ukrainian government. Now, Russia did not like this at all. Began arming southern rebels in Luhansk and Donetsk behind closed doors, and they tried to do what they did in Georgia, but it kind of got weird, confusing, and then before you knew it, Russia just invaded Crimea, stole it, and took it as its own, and Luhansk and Donetsk were its own kind of rebel zones for about 8 years. And they were just kind of in this stalemate where they'd fire a shot, and then everyone would freak out, and then it would go back to this kind of balance where it was uneasy and nobody really knew what to do. Until 2022, around February, when Russia just invaded, and they decided, well, X, Y, and Z. Now, Russia tried to justify this in numerous different ways, but effectively what it is this is the political reason. This is over, well, there's ethnic Russians in Ukraine. This is a territory that has been historically Russian and culturally similar to us, and now they're getting too close to the West, and we don't like that, so we're going to get in. Also, again, they had gotten to some squashes with them in 2014 as before. They weren't taking the loans that they were planning on taking, so they were mad about that, and they wanted the money, so they decided to get in. That's why they invaded. Again, bad. You shouldn't invade another country. But there's also a second reason why. And a lot of people in the West, as much as they understand that first reason, they don't understand the second reason, which is the religious reason. Now, the religious reason is a bit complicated, but I'm going to simplify. So effectively, Russia and Ukraine are both Orthodox. Now, this guy named Bartholomew, the first, he's the Patriarch of Constantinople. He thinks that Russia and Ukraine should be different churches. And so I'm not going to get into why he did what he did. There are rumors that the Clintons paid him or whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But effectively what he did was, what you're not supposed to do is, he just said, I recognize the Ukrainian church. And Russia said, you can't do that because Ukrainian church is a part of Russia. There was no Ukrainian church, to put that. The Ukrainian church was just a part of Russia. It was just patriarchs in Russia ruling over in Ukraine. Now, he wanted to separate this and abuse his authority by doing this and said, well, actually, no, Ukraine's actually an independent church now. And so it kind of created this schism. It was a political schism, more or less, where everyone, where Russia just said, we're not going to be in political communion with you. But, I mean, a Greek Orthodox going to a Russian Orthodox church is not going to get denied communion, vice versa, not going to happen. Again, it's just political squabbling, but again, it's still religious political squabbling. So, what ended up happening was in Ukraine, because Russia kind of lost some influence because of that, because of the authority of the Patriarch of Constantinople, what ended up happening is Ukraine kind of split into two weird churches, where you had the real Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and there was the other one, which was heretical. And what ended up happening at the start of the war, or not the start of the war, but we're gonna start before the war. The heretical church started getting a little bit more power. They started kind of influencing over the real Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and they started kind of trying to squash them in. Basically, they kind of are starting to get a little bit persecuted. And that's one of the reasons, again, why Russia wanted to get in, was not only to exploit its geopolitical power, but also to justify it behind religion that, hey, we need to put the Russian church back in charge to prevent this heretical church. Now, again, after the war broke out, I'm not sure if this was before or after, but Zelensky, the president, who is Jewish, he didn't want to have to deal with the religious business of it, so he was kind of letting the heretical church do whatever it wants, but he outlawed the actual Ukrainian church, and currently it is illegal, and there is a persecution going on in Ukraine of the actual Orthodox Church in Ukraine. It's kind of the issue, and that's kind of why, again, Russia's getting involved too. That's the reason, because there's a bit of persecution. Now, I'm going to get into this now. So, Ukraine doing this is not a good thing. And I'm going to get into where I stand on this. So, Ukraine, I'm going to just say, I don't like Ukraine's government. I support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people to defend themselves against Russia and not to go back under the Russian boots, for them to express themselves in the own Ukrainian Orthodox Church. I am Orthodox for new viewers, which, well, by the way, welcome. But Ukraine, in itself, its government is corrupt as hell. I mean, there's numerous cases of Zelensky's government, of their Congress, they're kind of Congress or House of Representatives or their Senate, kind of, for American audience. This is for American. Reason is, like, their parliament basically is also corrupt, and Zelensky not only is oppressing his own people, but he's using the war as not an advantage, but as a reason to do that. He's trying to justify doing this because, well, actually, we're at war. We're canceling elections. We're going to arrest people for speaking out against us. We're going to outlaw the church. We're going to do this. We're going to do blah, 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 basically. And that's not something we should support here in the West. That's not Western values. That's just cracking down because Zelensky is not a fan of it. And again, that's a different story, but the fact that he's clamping down on this because he doesn't like them, and also because he's trying to do this thing where he's stopping he's trying to stop the church of the Orthodox Church, but at the same time, they're politically mostly in the right. They don't want to be under Russia's boot, but they are corrupt. And again, this is not a video in support of Russia. Russia is just as bad. I'm going to be honest, Vladimir Putin is a dictator. That's not a controversial take at all. That is 100% accurate. Vladimir Putin also cracks down on freedom of speech. He enforces laws that are also anti-Western, that are authoritarian, that are dictatorial, he's reintroducing the secret police to do all these things. Basically, he wants to control his people. He wants to do whatever, and he's a bad leader. He's a bad person. He's, all these things. Nominally, also I am Polish, but I'm also Ukrainian. Like I said before, I know what's gonna happen at the end of the day if Russia wins, if Ukraine loses, if XYZ. And again, there are much better ways of working together between the Greek and Russian and Ukrainian churches to figure out how to solve that religious issue. And again, it's not going to be solved overnight. Again, yes. But Russia trying to justify that by invading Ukraine and trying to strong-arm it into the political aspect of it is what's wrong. What's wrong here. And Russia is very clearly in the wrong. But Russia is also, again, not perfect either. Ukraine's not perfect either. And I think everyone can acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, that's where I stand. And if you disagree with it, you disagree with it. You do what you want with that. Anyways, so in conclusion, that's my stance. That's my opinion. That's everything. But thank you all for watching this video. I know it's coming out later. I know it's a bit more unorganized than usual. I'm pretty tired. I gotta go now, like literally right now, because I just got a text from my mom saying I gotta go run to my grandpa's. But thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next one. Like, share, comment, subscribe. See you all in the next one. Peace.